Hello everyone, it's Space Chaser again. Welcome to the model review video, and this time we've got the Corgi original omnibus company OOC Leyland Lynx. The Rail Lynx was introduced by Leyland Bus in 1986. It was the successor to the ubiquitous Leyland National, and critics of the Lynx always say that it didn't sell anywhere near as many as the National did. Well, there were two reasons for this. First of all, it was only produced for 6 years, from 1986 to 1992, as opposed to about 13 or 14 for the National. And secondly, it was brought to market at probably the worst time you could hope to introduce a new bus. The bus grant, whereby the government had paid some of the purchase price of new vehicles, had ended a couple of years before the Lynx was introduced, so operators had to pay the full purchase cost of their vehicles. But more importantly, there was a lot of uncertainty in the industry at the time about deregulation and privatisation, and even when that had been dealt with, a lot of the early privatisation bids had been management buyouts, whereby the management had to remortgage the houses and sell the cars and things in order to buy the company, and they hadn't got any money to invest, so new bus orders were in the doldrums for quite a long time after deregulation and privatisation, particularly full-size buses. Minibuses tended to do okay. So in a very difficult market, it was the Leyland Lynx basically. It did sell quite respectably, as we'll see very shortly. Originally it was available with either Leyland TL11, Gardner 6 HLX-CT or Cummins L10 engines. In January of 1987, Leyland Bus was bought by its management, but in March of 1988 they sold it again to Volvo, and it became a subsidiary of Volvo. Volvo kept the separate Leyland name for a few years afterwards, but in 1990 they decided they wanted to introduce the Volvo THD 102KF engine to the Lynx. Now that engine needed a bigger radiator, so they redesigned the Lynx slightly to form what was known as the Mark II. The original version became known retrospectively as the Mark I. And quite literally all they did to it, as you can see on this model, this is a Mark II at the bottom, was that they put a bigger radiator on it. It stuck out at the front. Despite the redesign, the Lynx was phased out 2 years later in 1992 in favour of the Volvo B10B. The B10B did use quite a lot of the Lynx in its design. The vast majority of Lynxes produced were integrals. They were a complete vehicle, in other words, no separate body and chassis. It just came as one thing, basically. But 7 of them were produced as separate chassis for Citybus of Belfast. They were bodied by Alexander Belfast to the N-type design. In all, 910 of the Mark I were built. 2 of those were just chassis that were used as development vehicles by Leyland Bus and never received bodywork. And another 2 of them were CKD kits, as they were known, completely knocked down, in other words. So they built the bus but as a kit of parts, and it was shipped abroad, in this case to Australia, and then a local builder in Australia would assemble the kit of parts that had come across. For the Mark II, 142 were produced. 2 of those were development chassis for the manufacturer as well, and didn't receive bodywork. The other 140 went into service. So it did sell quite respectably. Biggest customers, West Midlands Travel, the successors of West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive. They put in an order for 250 of them, which added to 8 that the PTE had already bought, so they had 258 altogether. Calder Holdings, who owned West Riding and Yorkshire Woolen, they bought 129. Most of them new. They had a handful of second-hand ones that they managed to acquire, but most of theirs were new, as I say, 129 of them. So Corgi modelled both the Mark I and the Mark II, and as you know, I like to be comprehensive in these reviews, so I've got one of each. The Corgi model was introduced in June 1997, and between then and February 2009 there were 22 releases. 16 of them were Mark Is and 6 were Mark Is. They were all numbered together, so you can't tell by the catalogue number if it's a Mark I or a Mark II. You've got to actually look at the model. In addition to those 22, the Mark I casting was passed on to Atlas Editions, and they, in September 2012, did a version of it, the Midland Red West one. It's still available new to this day. I don't know how many they produced, quite a lot of them I think. So in all there were sort of 23 releases, if you like, 22 of them Corgi and 1 Atlas Editions. So the models that we've got to review are catalogue number 43113, the Mark I in Brighton and Hove livery. That was introduced in December of 1998. And it's a model of vehicle G996VWV. And then we've got catalogue number 43110, the Mark II in delivery of United. That was introduced in June 1998, that model. And it's vehicle J657UHN. So I'll talk quickly about the real vehicles and their history, and then we'll take these two out of the boxes and we'll have the all-important look around. So G996 VWV, the Mark 1, was new to Brighton Transport, who traded as Brighton Blue Bus, as fleet number 96 in July of 1990. In 1997, Brighton Blue Bus passed to Brighton and Hove. They bought it, so the bus went to Brighton and Hove as fleet number 196. And then in 2001 it was sold on to Rosendale Transport at Rottenstall in Lancashire, and I believe they were its last owner. I do remember seeing it with with Rosendale, should I say. I saw it at Waterfoot Turning Circle one day near Rottenstall. But yeah, I believe they were its last owner. As I said, they bought it in 2001. They ran it for a few years, and I believe after that it went for scrap. J657 UHN was new to United Automobile Services in December of 1991 as fleet number 5017. United became part of Arriva Durham County, and it passed to Arriva again as fleet number 5017. It kept its fleet number. By 2007 it was with Northumbria Coaches of Ashington, just north of Newcastle. Northumbria Coaches sold out during 2007 to Go North East, so it became fleet number 4997 with Go North East. And in 2009 they sold it on to New Venture of Ilsford in Kent, and I believe they were its last owners. So as I say, I'll take them out of the box, I'll unscrew them from the base because they're screwed on, as Corgis tend to be, and then we'll have a look around them. So there we are, after a brief fight with the screws to try and get them off the base, I've managed to do it. They're both limited editions with certificates, as most Corgi OOCs were. This is the one for the United bus. As you can see, 5,000 of them were produced. This is number 1531. The Brighton one, the certificate is still attached to the base. Number 2043, again, 5,000 of those produced as well. So first impressions are reasonable. I made this comment about the Optare Delta that I reviewed recently, the Corgi Optare Delta. You can check that video out on my channel. But it manages to look like what it's supposed to be, whilst also looking nothing like it. With the Delta, you can see why that is. There's a couple of mistakes on the front end that explain why it looks sort of not quite right. But the Lynx, you can't really explain it. It's just inexplicable why. But it manages, as I said, to look like a Lynx and not look like one at the same time. It's a strange model. The construction of it, I often go through this with the Corgi OOC models just to explain how they're constructed, because it does help to explain how they appear as well. But basically the bottom part of it, the bottom part of the front, the bottom part of the side, almost the entire back, usually on OOCs the entire back, but on the Lynx almost the entire back up to the top of the window line there. That is all one piece. It's like an open topped tray, a bit like this plastic one that I've got. It's like that. Basically the seats are riveted into that. They're a separate unit that's riveted in, but you can't get them off unless you drill the rivet out. On top of that there's the glazing unit, which is another tray like this but just the other way up. So it's open bottom, and that's plastic, and it goes all the way around. It incorporates the windscreen normally. The door is a separate piece that locates into the glazing unit at the top and into the step at the bottom, and then on top of that you've got the metal roof. In addition, on the Lynx you've got this back panel here. So I'll just try and get the camera to lighten up again. Above the window, this is a separate bit for some reason. Rather than being part of the roof or part of the rear end casting as it normally would be on an OOC, it's a separate piece that just comes off separately when you take the model apart. So that's how it's constructed, and that does help to explain parts of how it appears. So we'll have a look. The front end is one of the strangest things about it. It's correct. Everything's there that should be. And basically it looks about right, but it somehow doesn't quite capture the look of the real thing. The shape is correct, so you've got the kind of angled and slightly curved topped bit at the top there. Most Lynxes had black around this area. It was all sort of done in black, like the United one is there. But the Brighton ones had electronic blinds when they were new. I believe they actually retained them, but this has been modelled fitted with a winder blind. I don't know if that's correct for this bus. I'm pretty sure when Rosendale had them, they still had the electronic blinds that they were new with. Because of that, they had a different sort of surround that was painted in livery colour. Standout feature of the Lynx was this split windscreen with the driver's bit raked backwards like that. That looks more or less correct. I'm not quite sure this panel should angle over as much as it does. It should kind of go back a little bit, sort of more like that, just slope backwards rather than off to one side as well. But it doesn't look too bad. It captures the look. You've got the black decency partition painted across there. The wipers are moulded onto the screen but are picked out in black as well, which is quite nice. And it somehow manages to be correct without actually looking right somehow. This side of it should stick out a little bit more, I think, so that the screen's recessed, whereas as you can see, it steps in, and that doesn't help the appearance. But yeah, somehow, although it's kind of all the right shape and size, it doesn't quite capture the look of the actual bus. The lower panel's pretty good. The rectangular headlights there, the indicators underneath, the space for the fog lights there. This bus not fitted with them, so you've got little recesses. And the grille, it's all quite nicely done there. Leyland badge cast in as well. So yeah, the bottom of the front is probably the best part of the front, but everyone's there that should be. As I say, the whole thing just doesn't capture the look of it somehow, and I don't quite know why. Go around to the near side. The door, as always on OOCs, lets it down. It's just flat printed onto plastic, and it looks flat printed as well. It would benefit from a bit of relief. As I say, I sometimes make a rectangle of plastic and just cut out some holes where the windows are and just overlay it, just so there's some relief to the door. But, you know, it's not too bad, I suppose, from normal viewing distances. It does recess in a little bit too much as well. The door should be a little bit closer to the edge of the bus. The step's pretty good. Sometimes on OOCs it's quite crude as a step, it's quite thick, but on this one it's not too bad at all. And generally the shape and size is good. The windows are just painted onto the glazing unit, but they don't look too bad. The real thing had very flush windows, so they do capture the look of it. And again, the decency partitions painted across there as well. The panel lines are all cast in. They look a little bit heavy perhaps, but they're all there. And you've got the mouldings around the wheel arches and things. It's all pretty reasonable. Wheels, maybe a little bit of a letdown. The front one's pretty good actually. It's a pretty decent likeness of a Lynx wheel. I'll show you in better detail on the United one because it's got lighter coloured ones. But the back wheel's a little bit disappointing. It's a little bit flat. The hub should stick out a bit more. So the wheel should be a bit more recessed than it is. It's a little bit flat, moulded basically. There's not enough relief to it really. Go around to the back, yeah, it's not too bad at all. You've got the mouldings around the lights that were present on the real bus. There's a slight attempt to recess the registration plate. I'm not quite sure why it's got a rectangular plate on. They normally had a square plate with two lines, so you'd have like G996 at the top and VWV at the bottom. It may be correct for this bus, but it's still fitted into the recess. But yeah, it all looks pretty good. The back window is the right shape and size. You've got the coolant filler there. It's just a little dimple in the casting, but picked out in black, which is a nice detail. One thing about the Lynx which kind of annoys me a little bit on this model is that they've all got this little recess for the number blind at the back. A lot of Lynxes weren't fitted with a back blind and just had a flush panel. And you'd think with this being a separate panel, which it is, that Corgi would have been able to do a version with just a flush panel, just, you know, two versions of it, but they didn't. All of them have this little recess, and in ones where it isn't used, like the United one, it does look a bit silly. As you can see there, it's still present, but obviously nothing in it because the real bus didn't have a rear blind, and it would have been nice if they could just do two different types of this panel and do a flush one, as I say. Round to the offside. It's not too bad. The emergency exit looks a bit weird because it's obviously partly on the glazing unit and partly cast into the bottom bit there. There is some relief to it. The surround is cast in, but then you lose that there. It would have benefited from a bit of sort of relief on the glazing unit if they could have done it, or at least just pick it out in a slightly different colour to sort of show where the edges of the door were. It just gives the impression it vanishes when it gets to about there, doesn't it? It's a bit strange, but apart from that, it's all right. Fuel filler, got a cast in there. You've got the recess for it, and the fuel filler cap. But yeah, Got another filler there. I think that was the one for the auto lube, the oil basically. All in all, it's not too bad. Going to the roof, not much to say as there wasn't on a real Lynx. You got the join there between the front panel and the roof, which is how it should be. You've got this vent on the back, nicely cast in, but otherwise not a lot going on. And then we go around to the chassis. It's not bad for an OOC. I made the comment on the Delta that a lot of the chassis look like they were carved into the metal. You know, they look like they've been done by hammer and chisel. They're quite heavy and crude. But this is a little bit more refined. I'm not quite sure what's going on with this texture here. It's like a kind of strange texture defect. But apart from that, it looks pretty decent. You've got the main chassis members. You've got the various pipe and cable runs. Bits of suspension. You've got the underside of the engine and the exhaust system there, and it's all done in black, which tones it down quite nicely and stops it from shining up if you are you know, displaying the bus, climbing a hill or whatever. The wheel arches as well are done in black, which is nice, to not shining out at you. They often do them in body colour on models, which is another thing that does tend to spoil the appearance, but these are done in black and they look very good indeed. One thing I didn't mention, obviously, with the glazing unit going right round, these pillars are part of the glazing unit, so they're just painted on. And you can see the colour differential between the painted metal up there and the painted plastic. You can't really help that. It can't be helped. As can, you know, you can't help the join between the two bits there as well. You've got the line there, which obviously shouldn't be there on the rail bus. But yeah, all in all, not too bad. The interior a little bit crude, as OOC interiors of this period tended to be. The seats are a little bit thick in the, you know, the way they're moulded. It should be a little bit thinner perhaps. But, you know, it gives the general gist of it. They're all in the right place. And it's not too bad, really. As always, it would benefit if you could be bothered from taking the bus apart and just painting the interior. Give some different colours, you know, paint the floor a different colour. Do the seat backs a different colour. Do the top of them silver to represent the grab rails. Oh, sorry, black on the Lynx. They had black grab rails, not silver ones. But yeah, so you could paint it to bring out the detail, but it's not too bad, really. Something else I haven't mentioned, these little repeater lights up here are just printed on, which they look a little bit strange. From normal viewing distance they're not too bad, but close up they look a little bit weird. We'll just have a quick look around the Mark II. It's basically the same model, it's just got the slightly different front end that the Mark II had. But yeah, otherwise than that, as you can see, it's the same. The roof section, the windows are the same. You've just got the sticky out radiator there of the Mark II. Again, quite nicely done. Detailing perhaps a little bit heavy on the grille there, and it would benefit from just giving it a wash of black paint so that the recess bits were black, and it just, you know, would just pick out the grille basically. But yeah, apart from that, it's not too bad. And as I say, otherwise than that, is the same model. You can see what I mean about the wheels. The front one's not too bad, but the back one just looks a bit too flat. It should recess in a bit more and have a bit more relief to it. But yeah, again, you can see that that's the plate the Lynxes normally had, the square one on two lines put into the recess. You can see what I mean, again, about the rear number blind there, that it does look a bit strange when on a bus that didn't have one. It would benefit. Again, if you could bother, just put a bit of filler in there and just fill it in, sand it off and paint over it just to make it flat. That will make it look a lot better. The emergency door doesn't look so bad on this one because they haven't picked it out in black. It's moulded in, but they haven't picked the surround out in black down there, so it doesn't quite give the impression of vanishing. It's kind of, you can see it's there, but kind of not. It's not as prominent as on that one. One thing that is missing from the casting is the handle for it as well. So you can put a little dab of silver paint there just to represent the handle, and that would help matters quite a bit. But yeah, otherwise than that, very, very similar. The chassis of this one painted in silver, which is a bit of a strange one. It probably would have been when it was brand new. But yeah, it doesn't look too bad. You can see the texture effects, as I was saying earlier on, a bit strange. But it is what it is, I suppose. So, how much will a Lynx cost you if you want to put one in your collection? Well, I've done some research on the internet. I'm doing this video in March 2025, towards the end of March, believe it or not. The year is absolutely flying past. So when I looked on eBay, the cheapest Lynx I could find was £6.95 plus £3.35 postage and packing, so that's £10.30 all in. and that was the PMT, Potteries Motor Traction one. That's not as popular because it's in a heritage livery and it's got some sort of branding across the windows, the bottom of the windows. So if you're repainting it, you can't get that off basically. It's just, you're stuck with it. So it does tend to be a little bit cheaper for that reason. People tend to buy them to paint a lot of the time. But yeah, that was the cheapest one, £10.30. The most expensive one I could find was £42.32 plus £4.45 postage and packing, so £46.77 all in. And that was a Bristol City Line one. I think that's a seller that's a bit optimistic, to be fair. I did manage to find another Bristol City Line one for £16.91 all in. That was £13.95 for the actual bus and £2.94 for the postage and packing. And that's a more realistic, you know, £15-16 if you want the Bristol City Line. Don't pay 42 quid for one, or 46 for that matter. Had a quick look at Eliz Keith, the model shop in Eastbourne. The cheapest one they had was £9. That was a Wickham bus one. And the most expensive was £11. That was London and Country. Both of those would have postage on top, so you're looking somewhere between about £14 and £16 for those. I mentioned the Atlas one, the Midland Red West one. The Corgi, as I say, passed the Mark 1 casting on to Atlas editions. On eBay, you could get them for anywhere between £13.50, that was £10 plus £3.50 postage and packing, and £25.98 including postage. So yeah, between 10 and 25. And again, Eliz Keith had some listed for £10 brand new. Again, postage and packing on top of that, so you're looking about 15 quid to have it delivered to you. So that's the kind of price range you're looking at. Would I recommend getting it? Well, if you want a Lynx, this is basically your choice. There was a kit done by Concept Models, a plastic kit, quite a good one, but they're getting hard to find now. And it's whether you want to buy a kit. I think you could actually buy a ready-made one as well. They did an assembled one. But as I said, they are getting a bit scarce, and because of that, the prices are creeping up as well. So, you know, yeah, it's not a bad model. I don't quite know why it just doesn't capture the look somehow. It doesn't. It looks like a Lynx. You can tell it's supposed to be a Lynx, but just somehow it doesn't quite capture the actual look of the real vehicle. And I can't tell you why. I could sit and look at these all day and I wouldn't be able to tell you what the issue was. It's just one of those models where they seem to have got every individual bit right, but somehow when they put them together, they don't quite look as they should. But yeah, if you want a Lynx, it's definitely worth getting some. So they do the Mark 1 and the Mark 2. That's the other thing. Concept didn't do the Mark 2. They never did a Mark 1. So if you want a Mark 2, you really are stuck with the Corgi one, to be fair. But yeah, all in all, it's not a bad model. It looks alright from normal viewing distances. And as I say, if you do want a Lynx for your collection, this is probably the way to go to get one. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.